All right. Hello, everyone. It's lovely. Today, we're going to talk about Charles Manson. This is going to be a special video where I just ramble about different things. I wrote a script, but I may, in fact, just interject at times and give my opinions on things if I didn't already. If you follow me on Twitter, I usually like to tweet about what I'm reading. And the latest book I've read is Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi. So that's why we're talking about Charles Manson. I had to write a review for school, so I'll be reading that off to you guys. And while we just hang out and I do this for you all, I'll be playing some of Charles Manson's music, which I will play right now. Hopefully, you guys can hear it. Um, there, it's playing now. So, I'd also like to apologize in advance for my computer's fan. I know it's loud as fuck, but hopefully, you guys can at least hear me. If not, sorry. At least we'll see how interesting this gets. I hope this can be really relaxing like any other video, except live. I won't try to take up your time, but as you can tell from my normal videos, I am quite the talker. Yes, this is scripted, so it does seem a little pointless to have a live stream, but I'd also like you to ask me any questions you might have so I can answer them once I'm done reading all of the shit I wrote down. I do consider myself a bit of an expert now, although that's debatable. I'm also thinking of reading Charles Manson's book about the incidents. So now that I'm done explaining everything, I'll read you my school review, which I will get right now. Um, let's see. This is so weird. I feel so weird doing this. I don't even think anyone is in here. So if someone would come in, maybe I'll start talking. So I'll just wait. I don't think. Okay, cool. Someone else is in here. All right, person. I'm about to read you my review on Helter Skelter that I wrote for class. So enjoy. Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi is a nonfiction true crime novel about the infamous Manson family slayings in the summer of 1969. The story discusses life within the Manson family's cult, mostly highlighting Charles Manson, the head of the cult, and the peculiarity of his life, and how he was able to draw so many people into his cult, and how he was able to do so by utilizing the free love, free drugs, hippie culture of the time, fear, and manipulation. The story also describes other members and their role in the killings within the family, and their life before joining the family, as well as anything that could have been wrong with them psychologically. The story is really captivating, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone who is easily scared because there were nights when I was spooked out because of what was mentioned inside. What I really enjoyed about this book was that it was extremely detailed. So if you like a lot of description, that this is the book for you. The book is good for people interested in the way the minds of serial killers work, or even people interested in the history of serial killers, as well as people interested in cults. The book touches upon many topics spanning from Scientology to the Beach Boys to the environmental organization that Manson formed called ATLA. Even, um, oops, I can't say that or else I'll reveal where I live. Skipping that, I would also say if you're really into music, this is a good book to read because Charles Manson was a rejected musician. That being said, I think if he'd been given a chance in the music business, maybe none of this would have happened, seeing as his music is actually pretty good and surprisingly talks about love and peace. If you can hear this music, I don't know what your taste is, but this is fitting to my taste. He was also inspired by the Beatles' White Album, specifically the song Helter Skelter, to commit the killings. His thought process is insane, but in some cases, you are able to see how he came to those conclusions, which brings into question, was he really this good at manipulating people, and did he actually believe anything he was saying? To this day, Manson has been an anti establishment icon. I don't think there's any serial killer out there who captivates and even influences people as much as he does. There are still many people who don't think Manson should be in jail, seeing as he didn't actually commit any of the murders. But that's up to you to decide. I've already made up my mind. If you want to make up yours, you should definitely check out the book. And that's the end of my school review. So now I'll just try to decompartmentalize all of this. There are a lot of interesting things I can touch upon with the subject of Charles Manson. He's very intriguing, so if there's anything you'd like me to talk about, remember I'll be addressing some suggestions once I am completely finished reading my script. So you can leave any comments or questions in the chat. I hope that's enabled. This is my first time. I'm really sorry if this isn't professional enough. So I guess I'll start talking about why I have an interest in Charles Manson. I mean, what's a teenage anti feminist girl like me doing with an interest in fucking Charles Manson? Well, for starters, it's not hard to realize that he is one of the most infamous criminals out there, and this whole murder story took place in my great state of California. Now, I'm a bit of what you would call a California file. I'm very patriotic about my state, to say the least. Now, the great thing about California is that we're really rich in history, and if you consider serial killers rich history, then we've got plenty of them to talk about. We have the whole Charles Manson family. We have Richard Ramirez, Richard Chase, the Zodiac Killer, and you can insert any Ted Cruz joke you want here, and even the hottie, deranged hottie, Ted Bundy, killed someone in California. We have the recently identified Grim Sleeper. We have Herbert Mullen and Edmund Kemper, mentioned in Helter Skelter. Oh no. Okay, sorry, my computer was being weird. So yeah, we have Edmund Kemper and Herbert Mullen, and many more that I'm sure I've never heard of. Needless to say, we've had lots of people killing out here. Must be the weather. Now, this isn't the only reason I'm interested in Charles Manson. My mom has a big part in this too. She has a really big interest in these serial killers and murderers for as long as I can remember. She's always been intrigued by the O.J. Simpson case and the Black Dahlia murder. When I was 7, I watched my first ever serial killer documentary, if you can call him a serial killer, about Jonestown. I would just say he arranged a mass suicide, but whatever it may be, that documentary has lived with me since then, and ever since then, my mom kept watching more of these documentaries and interviews with me. Now, I don't think we've ever really watched anything on Manson per se, but he was brought up in many of the TV specials we did watch. Now, when I go to college, I want to major in psychology, and I think these criminals are a big reason why. I want to see how their brain works, because it isn't fiction, it's reality, and that amazes me. The thing that really triggered me into reading Helter Skelter was the fact that Leslie Van Hoden, one of the members, of the family, was being offered parole. She recently got her answer, and no, she will not be up for parole, and I don't think any of them in jail will ever be given parole. Their crimes were too heinous to be pardoned, and Deborah Tate, the sister of Sharon Tate, who was killed by the Manson family, boycotts it every time. She even boycotted the show Aquarius, which is basically like, this drama about the Manson family. um, I watched one episode. My mom and I weren't interested enough to continue watching. I did, however, love the music they used on that show. But then again, I love 60s music. The culture back then was something else completely, just like Charles Manson. Charles Manson is absolutely something else. I'm gonna try to dig out things from the back of my brain that I remember from the novel. I think one really interesting thing mentioned was that Charles Manson's middle name was Mills, and at some point he changed his middle name to Willis. The intent was to make his name sound like Charles Will is man's son. Now, if any of you don't know about him, and I don't know how you couldn't, Charles Manson thought he was God. He was referred to by the family as Jesus, sometimes Satan. I suppose there was a duality to it. Manson is the kind of person who will tell you everything bad is good and everything good is bad. When they asked him about whether the killings were bad or good, he pretty much said if it came from your heart and you wanted to do it, then of course it was good, because you only do what you think is good. And in a way, sure, I could make sense. It can make sense in a warped up reality. It really could. It's up to you. I'm a huge fatalist, so I think everything happens for a reason. So, although bad things happen, I consider them to be inherently good in the long run. Because if it was meant to happen, it was meant to happen. You can't stop it from happening, it just does. That's what I kind of see from this statement. So, Manson saw himself as Jesus Christ and yet Satan at the same time. The book mentions, and this is a mouthful, the process church of the final judgment, which was basically a sect of Scientology. I'm probably going to make a video on Scientology eventually, but let me tell you now, I think it is an absolutely idiotic religion, a complete scam. If you're a Scientologist, I'm very sorry, but your religion is retarded and makes zero sense. Fucking Zeno. So I'm actually considering reading Dianetics just to see how fucking mindless their book is. I consider Scientology a cult, so that'll link up to what I'm about to say. But first, let me explain the Process Church to you. This church basically believes in both Jesus and Satan, and they think that on Judgment Day, Jesus and Satan will work together. Jesus will judge and Satan will execute. Now we can see an obvious parallel with that belief and Charles Manson. Charles has been asked in many interviews about who he is, and he replies he's Jesus and the devil. Something along those lines. And he basically judged who would die, and trust me, Sharon Tate and the LaBiancas were not the only ones to get killed by the gruesome family. I'm sure there were many more, and members even admitted to many more. But well, he's doing all of this. He's judging as Jesus, and then he tells the other members to kill them off too, as Satan. Now, with Scientology, Manson was a part of this for a while, but he claimed to have reached the highest level in Scientology called set it clear. Whether that's true or not, we won't know, but one particular thing I find extremely funny is that Manson himself thought that Scientology was too crazy. I found that hilarious. Here we have a criminal partially responsible for some of the most gruesome deaths in history, and he's saying Scientology is crazy. So, in my opinion, Scientology is sort of like a cult, especially with all of the brainwashing, aka auditing, they do in there. The Manson family is a cult itself as well, and going back to my very first documentary, Jonestown, that also was a cult. There's also another cult that was formed in Waco by David Koresh. One thing they mostly have in common is this Jesus aspect. Perhaps not Scientology, but at least Scientology has this Xenu as their god. Although, again, I think it's just a scam. Maybe not so culty in that aspect, but they're definitely brainwashed by the people who are the higher ups in their religion. Likewise, the family was fascinated with Charles Manson, and the members of the People's Temple were fascinated by Jim Jones. Another example of this Jesus-like fascination can be seen in the Tokyo subway sarin attacks, where members of the cult Om Shinrikyo looked at their founder Shoko Asahara as Jesus because he claimed he was. So in many of these cults, we see this theme of being someone of high power. In many cases, Jesus. We usually think of cults as being religious, so it makes sense. For a cult to work, you've got to be extremely charming and manipulative. That's why people like Hitler and Stalin rise to power. They put on the charm and people somehow manage to feed into what they're saying. It's disguised as something good so that people will buy into it. So to all the people who came here probably expecting a fucking feminist rant, to apply it in that sense, feminists are fed these lies about society, and they get so indoctrinated that they are slaves to this idea. The only people holding feminists back is feminism, but they want to stay a part of their cult so badly, just like many of the people in the movements I just mentioned. Alright, so that's all I gotta say about feminism, just had to pop that in there for the fan base. Charles Charles was also very charming, and he knew how to manipulate, and he made sure no one denied his power. To get in the girls, he'd try to read them, see what they wanted. He'd take them in through drugs or sex, something like that, and the same would be for the guys, drugs or sex with the girls. It's the only reason why Charles kept the girls around. He saw them as nothing more than ways to keep guys around. There were many people who associated with the family, but did not stay. Smart people. But Charles has said it himself. He wasn't part of that generation. He said all of those people came to him. Perhaps true, maybe not. I find it hard to believe that he isn't lying about some of this stuff, and this is one of those things. I don't think he's a Rasputin with hypnotizing eyes. However, I understand why people stayed. I can see how he's somehow magnetic. That's why people are so interested in him. If I asked someone if they knew who Charles Manson was, I'm sure they'd say yes. If I asked someone if they knew who Jeffrey Dahmer was, there's less of a chance they'll know who he is. Sure, these people are interesting, but there is something about Manson that is unlike any of these other people. Now, as I was saying, Charles has said he isn't a part of this generation, that in his words, he wasn't a teeny bopper. So we all know he was the oldest member. He thought that these teens all looked up to him as a father. Again, more of the Jesus aspect. So he says that he wasn't their age, he just looked young, which is true. When I saw how much younger the others are compared to him, it was actually surprising to me. So in a way, he wasn't part of this 60s generation. He wasn't about the free love and free drugs movement in my eyes. He just managed to use it to his benefit. He offered the family free love and free drugs, and they bought into it, which is a shame. A lot of people romanticize the 60s, myself included, but when you look at how much shit went down back then, it kind of makes you think, why would I romanticizing ha- why would I romanticize having sex with as many people as I want and having as much drugs as I want whenever I want? I mean, it seems kind of counterproductive, doesn't it? Well, whatever it is, I'd say it was pretty interesting to say the least. I see a lot of similarities with their protesting to the protesting occurring right now, but it was a lot different and actually achieved something, plus, they weren't fighting with some safe space bullshit, so I commend them. Back to Charles, though. He was able to use the culture of the 60s to his benefit and draw in all of these people, and bam, the moment the family committed the Tate LaBianca murders is the moment the 60s ended. How is death peace and love? It isn't, but the family thought it was. Susan Atkins even claimed at the time that you have to have a lot of love to kill someone. It's that kind of warped mindset that totally destroyed the peace and love movement. To Charles, death and life were one and the same, and to kill someone was like setting them free. There was no difference to him. And even funnier is that he was about peace and love. You may not be able to hear the music in the background that I'm playing, the lyrics, but much, if not all, of Charles' music focuses on peace and love. We sometimes wonder with Hitler that if he'd been accepted to art school, would the Holocaust not have happened? And the same thing crosses my mind with Manson. If he had just been given a chance in the music industry, would these murders not have occurred? Something tells me they still would have, considering the fact that, as I said, there were more murders before the Tate and LaBianca ones. Manson's music is impeccable. I love it. There are some songs that just take me away to another place when I listen to them. Now, Manson has been rejected his whole life. From his I think all he wanted was to be accepted. But whenever he played music, people wouldn't accept him. It angered him. So that may have been the tipping scale. It's a real need for acceptance that can hurt a person. It's like Stephen King's Carrie, I suppose. Another topic I'd like to touch upon is the environmental group Manson created called ATWA, or ATWA. Some of you may have heard the song by System of a Down with the same name, ATWA. Yeah, that's actually another reason I started getting interested in Manson again. I heard that song and I thought it was great. This is about 2 years ago, but when I saw Manson, I was like, hey, it's that one guy my mom likes to talk about. She does talk about him frequently. So I immediately had to find out what the hell ATWA was, and it stands for Air, Trees, Water, Animals. And it also stands for All the Way Alive, because basically, Manson thought we needed to protect these things to protect life itself, and that would keep us all the way alive. I'm guessing. I think it's a great concept. I'm all for protecting the environment. The funny thing to me is that Manson says he would never kill an animal, yet somehow killing humans is okay to me. To him, not to me, obviously. It was okay to him to kill humans. It makes no sense, but I mean, that's basically how PETA is. So, what can one do? Next, I'd like to talk about the Beatles. So, I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but Charles would read passages from the Bible to the family, and he'd interpret what it meant to them, and he would apply those passages to the Beatles. He'd say the four horsemen were Paul, John, Ringo, and George, stuff like that. Similarly, he'd say the Beatles were talking to him through their songs, and he had an obvious fascination with the song Helter Skelter. Now, I'm not going to get into Helter Skelter quite yet because I want to make sure I sound like a total nut job at the end of this video rather than in the middle. But I just know Charles Manson may be a complete maniac, but he could also quite possibly be a genius. So I have a few more things to touch upon, and then I'll talk about Helter Skelter. These two should be really, really quick. I have a quick little trivial fact for you guys. It's a bit gross, but Charles Manson would perform massive orgies with the family, and he'd basically orchestrate them, telling everyone who to fuck, how to fuck, and where to be. Apparently, the goal was for one simultaneous orgasm, but it never worked. So, away from that weird shit, Manson also said that if he were ever the one killing people, everyone would be dead. Now, if you didn't know, Manson never committed any of the murders. He just told them he just told them to do it. And even that's debatable. A lot of people say that he didn't tell them to do it. Regardless of whether he told them to do it or not, I don't think he should have gone to prison for that reason. However, I also think it's better that he is in prison. For the most part, if someone tells you to go kill yourself and you actually do it, you're a fucking idiot. If Manson told them, go kill those people, and they did it, well, then that's their fucking choice and they're idiots. One of the members who got immunity and never had to go to prison, Linda Kasabian, is a prime example of this. Yes, she was there, but she told Manson to his face, I'm not you, Charlie. I won't kill people. That was her choice. If the other idiots decided they wanted to kill, it's not Manson's fault, it's their own faults for being idiots. Now, I think the reason he's in there is because he conspired with them in a way, but he wasn't even at the crime scene with them. And just because he tells someone to do something doesn't really mean anything. But that could be exactly why he needs to be in prison. If he had so much power on these people, then imagine what he could do with a large audience, because I'm sure the family would have grown eventually. The thing with that is, still with a larger audience, are you still responsible for what other people decide to do? I don't really think so. If I were out telling people about feminists and I had a large audience and a ton of them went out and killed feminists, does it somehow become my fault? It's the whole thing with Catcher in the Rye, because people have killed others after reading the book. Should the book be banned? There's actually a short story I had to read for English class my freshman year called Most Dangerous Game. This was about a rich guy who hunted lots of dangerous animals, and eventually he got bored of that because he's hunted everything. Some random dude lands on his island after a storm, and he basically starts hunting that guy because humans are the most dangerous game. So you can see how that might appeal to serial killers, right? Well, it did. The Zodiac Killer actually made reference to that story in one of his notes to the police. Are we going to ban it? No. So if someone tells people to do something or talks about something and someone goes out of their way to do something illegal, should the person talking about this shit go to prison? No. That's why Charles is just a political prisoner. He's in there because he's too dangerous to other minds, and that scares the government. So those things make me a little in the middle about him being in there. But the thing that solidified why I think he should be in there is the fact that he has been in there his whole life. He has been going from institution to institution since he was a kid. When those murders were done, he had been in institutions for 17 years of his 34 or 35 years of living. That's basically half of his life. Of course, he's used to it by then, don't you think? Him being in prison is an environment he's used to, and when he was released, prior to the formation of the family, he had actually begged to stay in prison because he wasn't sure he'd be able to survive out in the real world. If only they had listened, then none of this shit would have happened. So, you see, to Manson, prison is a home. I was watching some interviews with him, and he made a compelling argument when someone asked him how he felt about being in prison. He said he wasn't in prison and that everyone out in the real world was. Which is true. We are in a prison. When you're in prison, you're living there for free. You are being fed for free. You get health services for free. You don't have to worry about a job. You don't have to worry about being poor. You can relax. And like many of the Manson girls did, you can get a fucking degree while you're in prison. You can do many things in there that you can't do in the real world. That's why when a lot of people want to say they want this whole free this, free that world, they are looking at having a prison lifestyle. I think everyone is in prison regardless. What is true freedom? It varies from person to person. Are people capable of doing the things they want to do without any restrictions, or are they fine with these restrictions? There's a lot to it, so I thought that was interesting. And you guys know the Nazi symbol that's on his forehead? Basically, just tattooed there. It was initially an X, and many of the Manson girls put this X on their face and shaved their heads like Charles did. The X basically meant they were X'd out from society, that society was trying to get rid of them and couldn't understand them. Alright, now I'm going to get into Helter Skelter. Basically, and I really don't see how Manson got to this conclusion by listening to the Beatles song, but he thought that Helter Skelter was about an apocalyptic race war that would happen between the blacks and whites. So at the time, the Black Panther movement was occurring, so when the family went out and committed the Tate and LaBianca murders, they wrote things with blood like pigs, political piggies, rise, and of course their newly made up Helter Skelter. They also left a paw print as was signature to the Black Panthers. By doing this, Manson thought that perhaps the race war would be speedy, that if this happened, whites would fight back and kill blacks, and blacks would kill whites. The thing is, blacks were going to win, because they were done with being under the control of whites. When the whites did kill blacks, um, it would be black people who were actually on their side. So sorry guys, if this is real, I guess I'm going to have to die. And then blacks would be angered by those killings and kill all the whites off. But not the Manson family. The Manson family would hide in the desert and then reemerge after all the fighting was done. And because blacks wouldn't be able to take care of themselves with their newfound power, they'd run to Manson and they'd once again be enslaved. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like BLM to me. I think Black Lives Matter is finally doing Helter Skelter. As the Manson family said, Helter Skelter is coming down. I really think it is. I think something like this is happening, and unless we can stop it, Manson's prophecy will be fulfilled. There are racial tensions in this country, and I feel only a few people who will go out and start rioting, burning down things, it, it'll be 10 times worse. Um, it'll be 10 times worse than before, and no one will be safe. It'll be an all out civil war. So beware, everyone. Helter Skelter could be real. And so I guess that's the end of my talk. I'll answer questions now. That was a lot speedier than I thought it would be. And I don't think I got any. I don't see. Oh, alright. I did get two. I did get two comments, but they're not questions. So, you know, this was my first live stream. I don't really know how it works. So, you know, that's it. I guess this is bye. Thanks for checking this out. Thanks for spending the, what, like 30 minutes with me. I will see if I can do another live stream maybe. And, as always, have a nice day. You know, bye.